If you had to give advice to a young up-and-coming musician, what would it be exactly?
It would be spend the time learning your craft first, spend the time learning to write songs, spend the time learning to sing or play or whatever, instead of just wanting to chase fame. Just write songs that you feel. If you love them yourself, then eventually, like if you're attached to them and you're putting a message through in the music, I think that out there somebody else will also resonate with them too. I think that if you're doing something that you're driven by and you don't even know why you're driven by it, but something creative, you just go back to that. There's a fire or a passion in your soul that just keeps you pushing forward with it, no matter how many doors close in your face or how many knockbacks you have. You still get that amazing sense of satisfaction when you create a song that you just want to hear yourself. For me, that just gives me so much satisfaction if I make something that I just want to put on in the car and listen to, and then everything else disappears.
What are some of the things you've had to overcome to get to where you are now?
Yeah, it's kind of a constant struggle really to get there, because you never know. There's never a set path. You can't just go to university and get your degree and come out and go, right now I can work as a musician. It doesn't work like that. People will respond to your music or not. You might write songs for 25 years and not write one good one, and then write one great song everybody loves, your back catalogue all of a sudden. So it's there's no roadmap to it. So for me it's been constant. Just constant knocking on doors and constant writing and constant trying to learn the craft and reinvent myself whenever I've needed to, working as a terrible waitress, as I mentioned before, and doing other things on the side to support making music. But I always made sure that music was my main focus. I think that you have to be very driven by that, because there's a lot of things you have to sacrifice. So it has to be your only passion. It's not something that you're just going to go, right, I'm going to become famous and make a hell of a lot of money. It doesn't, maybe for some people, but I think that's the norm. I 100% agree that piracy has actually helped some artists in the fact that now you can make money from touring. It's just changed the way you have to flip the way that you look at it. So that's why I changed to electronic music as opposed to rock music. Because, we weren't selling albums with the band, but I realised that, okay, if I can put electronic music out there and have people in Egypt or Amsterdam or anywhere in the world watching it on YouTube, then there's the opportunity to tour to these places. So instead of selling albums, you're selling tickets to your shows. So it enables artists to have a fan base in places you never would have been able to get to before. Piracy has helped a lot of artists that wouldn't, like myself really, that in dance music I wouldn't have ever been able to tour the Middle East or Amsterdam or all of these countries that I go to all the time now, because I have songs that people watch on YouTube. So I look now at the music as more of a marketing promotional tool. I'm happy to give the music away, make the music for free, and then people will come to the shows. So you can have a touring life as opposed to just a recording life.
What are your thoughts on the benefits and the negatives of social media?
Yeah, I think in one sense, yes, it does kind of confine you to making music or content that you think people are going to respond to. But on the opposite hand, I think that it's enabling a lot of people to be creative in ways that they wouldn't have been able to before. So before, if you were trying to get a major label deal or get radio play, you had to really fit into a box. Whereas now, a lot of artists are able to really push the boundaries, and you can make music in your home studio, on the road, on your laptop, whatever, and you can make whatever you want and put it out there. And the beauty of it is that if people respond to it somewhere in the world, you can find your niche, or people can find you. So I actually think, again, that is a benefit if you can just spin it and use it to your advantage,
A lot of people I've spoken to, they feel that pop music is becoming more and more contrived, more manufactured. A lot of the artists you hear on the radio, are they really artists, or are they just product from the label? What do you feel about pop music today?
Yeah, that's a tough question really too, because some pop music, obviously it's popular music, it's very catchy. So I definitely love a good pop song when I hear it, and I can appreciate how well it's written and the craft that goes into it. But yeah, there is a lot of that manufactured kind of element to it as well. I do tend to gravitate more towards the artists that I know are writing their own music, and the ones that are actually responsible for creating their own image and doing the hard yards themselves. I think you can really hear that. You can hear if somebody's put their own spirit into what they're singing or not.
Why do you think electronic music has become so popular?
Electronic music, I think mostly has become popular because firstly it was just something new and fresh that nobody had heard of before, but it also enables people to make music from their bedrooms and stuff. So there's all this music coming from 14-year-old kids that are in their bedrooms that are just pushing the boundaries and doing something nobody's ever heard before. And there's now the outlets for that kind of music to get out and reach people through social media and whatever. So yeah, I guess kids are kind of resonating with it, and a lot of people are just liking the fact that it's not just 4 instruments. It's pushing the boundaries a bit more.
You started off in rock and roll, and then you transitioned into electronic music. What was your story? Why did you make that switch?
Yeah, well, you know what, it was a little bit sad of the fact that the rock music kind of scene was dying out at the time. I started transitioning into dance music about 2009, and I was in a rock music, like a heavy kind of rock band before that, which was great fun, awesome. But 6 of us in the band, everybody touring together. It just, in the climate, the way that shows are now with the music scene, traveling around with 6 people to do shows was you couldn't do it. Because no, it's not going to work. Doing the bottom line of the numbers, we ended up paying to do shows that we were even being paid for quite well, but with everyone's flights and hotels. So I kind of figured though that I could write the same songs that I write for rock music and incorporate them into dance music, which is what I've done. So
part of the reason you switched over to electronic music is because the rock scene was not as prominent. Is that essentially what you were saying?
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, I think it was great. There was a big following still with rock music, and the people that came to the shows were still very supportive. So I think there was still the want there for the music to be available. But I think it's just the money in music just disappeared once all the major labels started to kind of condense. The money for shows just wasn't enough to support bands that have got 6 or 7 people touring and a sound guy. So it's just, it's not kind of viable.
I feel like the music business has changed completely since the rise of Facebook and Instagram, that sort of thing. What are your thoughts on how that's changed the business?
Definitely. I think that social media has completely changed the business, and I think that that's what took a lot of the money away from the major labels, and that's what stopped bands from having so much money heavily invested in making their albums and stuff. People had to then make their money from touring as opposed to making the money from record sales, and that's just changed the way that everyone looks at touring, because instead of touring being the side fun thing where people are making millions off sales, now you've got to cut costs on touring. So people are making condensed versions of their bands or putting things on backing track, or getting DJs to tour with them as opposed to traveling with 6 or 7 people. It's not viable so much anymore unless you're Coldplay or something. I think that it all started perhaps when everything became, Spotify and downloads, and where the record sales just weren't there anymore. I think unless you're one of the top rock bands in the world that can survive just through shows, there's no record sales there to sustain bands that want to just keep touring just for the love of it. So really you have to make your money out of touring now. If you're going to be making music and you're doing that as a main source of your income, you have to be making the money from touring. So beforehand, rock bands I think would make a lot of money from album sales and royalties, and touring was just the side thing. But now that it's the main thing, you have to kind of condense and be able to travel with 1 or 2 people and a USB stick, and some sound effects or whatever, instead of having a whole bunch of crew on the road.
You were in a band with your brother at one point in time.
Yeah.
What's it like working with your family?
It's great. It's a double-edged sword. Of course, we can fight a lot and have our arguments, but with family, you always can trust the other person. We know what each other is thinking without having to say it. If I write an idea, that I'll know whether he likes it or not immediately, because we've always written together. Also, there's no pleasantries there. If one of us writes an idea the other doesn't like, it's you can just cut through all of that and get to the point. So it's great. We've always worked really, really well together, and now my brother is the more organized of us, and I get to tour and do this side of things while he takes care of the business side. So it's very symbiotic.
What was it about the 90s bands that really appealed to you?
All the 90s bands are my main influences, and they still are. So Garbage, Pearl Jam, all of those bands, I feel like, I don't know if music had more spirit to it then, or if it was just the fact that as you're growing up and you're at school, everything's a first and the music becomes the soundtrack to your life then. So I don't know, that music invokes that time period for me. So I always kind of go back to those influences when I'm writing now and try and capture that same emotion too.
What was it about the music that appealed to you? Just the emotion?
Just the emotion, and I think that a lot of those bands, they just had a chemistry together. That's one thing that I think that you miss now in electronic music, is you get a bunch of people together that each individually perhaps wouldn't have that same effect, but when they all got together and they all wrote songs together and as a collective on stage, the energy that they all had, it just created something just far bigger than any of them would have been on their own. And yeah, that was an amazing thing, an amazing time in music.
This expression, rock is dead, when you hear it, what does that mean to you? Does it have any legitimacy? What are your thoughts, essentially?
Well, it hurts me because I love rock music. I grew up listening to rock music, and I'm a huge rock music fan. So I hate to think that all the music that we grew up listening to and loved, that's influenced us so heavily, could be dying out. But I don't particularly agree with the fact that, like with people saying that it's dead. I think that perhaps it's taken a backseat for a little while electronic music has exploded, but there's so many influences being used from rock music in electronic music and in different styles. But I think, everything swings around, and I think that live instruments will have to make a comeback. Maybe it's going to be incorporated into electronic sounds as well, and it'll become a hybrid of some sort perhaps, but yeah, I think that rock music is still alive and well underneath it all. Yeah, the term rock is dead, it upsets me because all of my main influences and all the music that I feel so much connection to from my school days and growing up, I don't want to think that music is over, but I do think that it lives on, and it's just changing and evolving. I think that a lot of us are taking a lot of the influences that we had from rock music and incorporating it into electronic music now. A lot of people are starting to add a lot of live instruments and things to electronic music now too, seeing as people are also getting a little fatigued from just hearing the electronic stuff. So I think definitely rock and roll can come back to the mainstream, and I 100% hope that it does, because it's got a lot of soul to it and a lot of heart. I think that everything's just always evolving, and it'll come back around.
So, Emma, if there's one thing that you would like people to know about you as a person, what would it be?
Oh, as a person, that's an interesting question. It's very hard to sum yourself up, isn't it? I don't know. As a person, I guess I'm just an open person that wants to give as much energy out through music as I possibly can, and have an amazing life experiencing that, meet as many great people along the way as I can. So, yeah, music's a great vehicle for that.